Well, joining us now in the studio is Conservative Councillor for Epping and Theydon, Holly Whitbread. Really good to have you on the programme with us again, Holly. Look, whilst all eyes seemingly at the moment over in Bali for the G20, lots of discussion in the papers this morning about domestic issues, as you'd also expect with the budget looming on Thursday. And with your speciality, actually, a lot of focus on councils, this uplift in council tax expected, and also some suggestion that a couple of councils, Tory strongholds as well, Hampshire and Kent, I believe, facing bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's a really difficult time for local authorities, particularly with the pressures around adult social care, an area which I actually work in at a county level, and that's very, very challenging, the costs around that. And actually, councils aren't immune to the pressures that we're all feeling in terms of inflation, the rising cost of living, the cost of building materials. So it is a very difficult time for councils, and it's always a really difficult balancing act, because I know actually my district council is the lowest tax authority in Essex, something we're very proud of and always try and protect, but equally we want to deliver the best possible services for local people as well.
Yeah, what do you think about this? Council tax will surge past £2,000 for the average household under these plans that they're talking about, and potentially the Chancellor will give councils the ability to put that up without to put up the levy by 5% without a local referendum. Is that right?
It's very difficult, and I think what councils are conscious of is that people are going to be feeling pain in a lot of other ways as well. Certainly in my authority, what we're trying to do is not increase tax as much as possible, but we are kind of aware of the realities around it. But for the last few months, we've really been working on budgets and looking where we can make efficiencies which are least noticed, actually, and also where we can bring in revenue as well. But it is a really difficult balancing act, and actually no one wants to put that pressure on local residents.
Do you think there should be a referendum, though? Do you think that maybe people who live in those districts and those councils should be given a say in whether council tax goes up?
It's well, they ultimately always have a say, don't they, at the elections? And I know many authorities have. Well, I have certainly elections every year in my area because we're in third. So I think people do get that chance at local elections.
Yeah, and it's just you talk about social care and inflation, rampant inflation being big problems for councils, but also the migrant crisis has to be a huge pressure in terms of short notice, having to provide resources for hundreds. All the time. So talk a little bit about the kind of pressure that is presenting. And I think the Daily Mail this morning, putting it in terms of this package, this deal that we've done with France has to succeed, not least for the nurses in society who we're already struggling to pay for as well. So there are these really difficult binary choices councils are facing, and then these price battles as well, these wage battles as well.
Absolutely, and I do welcome the deal with France, but I think even Rishi acknowledged it's only the start, and there's a lot to look at, particularly in terms of the speed of processing here in the UK. And it's a really difficult challenge. I know I'm affected in my own area by hotels being used as processing centres, and actually, the biggest challenge is the impact on local infrastructure, whether that be GP surgeries, as well as education places locally. And that does put a huge pressure back on local authorities, particularly at a county level.
Yeah, and just give us an idea of how much social care is struggling in your neck of the woods.
Well, it's a huge challenge everywhere. I mean, for some councils, it's 70% of their budget, and actually it's not something that people necessarily realise that they're paying for. So I'll give Essex as an example, which is a huge county. At any one time, it's normally around 17,000 people who are using adult social care. So actually in a county of 1 million people, that's a relatively small number, but obviously has a huge impact on everyone's tax bills.
And problems with recruitment as well, because we're going to hear about that later on in the programme. We've got a report on that. There's big problems with recruitment and unfilled vacancies.
Absolutely, particularly around domiciliary care at people's homes. That's a huge challenge, and finding people who want to work in the sector for the long term as well is a real challenge.
Not all doom and gloom, though, ahead of Thursday, and I think the Chancellor very aware that he needs to offer some light at this really difficult time. The Times this morning leading on help for the poorest by boosting the living wage, and we're also getting lots of signals, the strongest signal yesterday from the Prime Minister yet, that triple lock will be protected for pensioners and those on benefits.
I think what's important at this budget is that, first of all, the most vulnerable in society are protected, so those who need the support, particularly pensioners, and I will welcome that triple lock announcement if it is made. But certainly, you know, what I think needs to be is that the pain is shared equally, because actually what I worry about most, particularly in my own kind of areas, those kind of people who just about managing and fall between the gaps. And that's the challenge we're seeing. I do a lot around housing. That's my cabinet portfolio at District. And we're certainly seeing more pressure on people needing social housing, needing more help. So it's the people in the middle I also worry about, and I hope there'll be support there too.
OK, really interesting. Holly Whitbread, Conservative Councillor for Epping and Theydon in Essex. Thank you as always.